been a minute since I ran one wild on RobCore. So, yeah. Alright, cool.
Okay, so I left you guys on a bit of a cliffhanger in the last video.
Me, I'm sitting on
So I'm gonna make
GPT-3.
up for
Figure out that
here, right?
Master
So
Mason
what
note,
ended up
yeah,
happening
about
is once
being on
Ultron
our
arrives on the
side
scene,
and being
a
the
fight immediately
celestial
breaks out between
fighting
him
stuff
and Adam
a little
Warlock.
while
Now,
ago,
this is something
about
that you
figuring out
don't
sorting
usually see, and
algorithm,
that's one of the things to know. For
pushing
those of you
Jean
guys who are
Grey
into
over
Marvel
the
comics,
edge, and the rest
Marvel
of
for the
them
most
about
part kind
blowing
of
up a
keep
planet.
things contained in-house, and it's something that people aren't
Figured out
necessarily
yet,
fans of, but oftentimes what you will
Tried
see
Anti-Life.
when it comes to various groups facing off against various villains is they sort of keep it to themselves. Now, a lot of that's just the nature of the comics. In a Spider-Man comic, for example, you don't really see him fighting a villain of Captain America. You wouldn't really see him fighting Red Skull, because Spider-Man largely has his own villains to fight. Now, that's kind of the downside of comics, because somebody takes over the run of Spider-Man and is like, well, here we go. Peter Parker's gonna fight the Green Goblin again for like the 1 million time. And it does kind of get boring after a while, and Marvel tries to solve that issue with crossovers, which I think is the wrong way to approach it. But the fact remains that you don't usually
isn't
see
it Peter
Ultron
Parker's
facing off against Adam
anti-villain
Warlock.
deep
What you're
down
talking
being a
about
smart
here is a version
guy
of
that
Ultron
figures
that's
out
just
some
as strong as he ever
formula
was,
that
facing off against a guy that he's never
stuff.
fought before, but is well aware of. And that's kind of a cool thing, because again, when it comes to these different superheroes, while you may not necessarily see them fight villains that don't traditionally belong to them, these villains are aware of who they are. And when it comes to Adam Warlock, his significance exists on a universal level. Everybody in the universe knows who Adam Warlock is, at least if they've been around for a little while. Again, that's the reason why Phyla Vell doesn't really know, because she hasn't been here all that long.
You can't do math until you have words, but once you have words, it's kind of like Warlock's gauge boson. He's basically Reed right now, but different.
But he's not able to hold them off permanently. And that's an important thing to grasp here, is because a lot of people who are fans of Adam Warlock would be like, no, Adam Warlock would absolutely destroy the Phalanx with very little effort. And under normal circumstances, you would be right. If we're talking about Adam Warlock during the events of like the Infinity Gauntlet, or Adam Warlock during Infinity War, or Infinity Crusade, or you're talking about him in any of the other stories that are written out there, yeah, I mean, he would win this blindfolded. But one of the things to remember is this is Adam Warlock freshly back, right? So his
Farm
powers
Simulator
haven't fully
before, right?
coalesced,
You
but at the
did
same
this
time,
AI
he doesn't fully know who he is
Logic
or what
and you
he's
figured it
capable
out.
of. So it's not Adam Warlock at 100%. And so him going against a Phalanx and being able to kind of
puts us out to 70 or 80 or something like that. Pretty fair. The red dot blinks on our hand and everybody circles around it.
In this situation. And so what ends up happening here is when he does go against Ultron, Ultron does get the upper hand on him. Now you do have Phyla Vell with Moondragon trying to race her out of there as fast as they can, but ultimately she ends up perishing. And so besieging the High Evolutionary and just being like, we have to find a way out of here. Like, we have to get out of here as fast as we can. At the end of the day, it's all they really can do. Adam Warlock kind of keeps going through these energy fluxes, right, where he has these sort of energy-based epileptic seizures, if you want to call them that. And where Phyla Vell does show up, this is one of the most badass moments for a character. Right? This is one of the reasons why I tell people, Phyla Vell is someone who's slept on. And when the time comes where she gets put in the MCU, like, she's going to blow the doors off, right? You haven't seen anything from anybody in the MCU when it comes to, like, hand-to-hand conflict. Wanda, Spectrum, Monica Rambeau, Captain America, none of those guys have anything on Phyla Vell. Because when she comes in here, she starts taking it to the Phalanx and literally just hacking them to pieces. But here's the downside.
I don't know. I mean, there's a perception of a ground guy walking their way to manager, running around in Nimbus and the overhead before you hit T2 estate limit. I mean,
but the reality here is she's fighting.
But internally, that mill works like a country or anything else. It's a microcosm of Venom and virtual Tony Stark over there before I gotta blow a fuse and make a biome in there that just gets the regular critters working, because it's actually the number of survival algorithm with diversity that seems to work. And it's not supposed to be perfect based on that number. It's supposed to be Bunny and Cicada and the Sun That Hate numbers every 11 years. That thing
and it literally destroys the entire sun along with the whole star system. Now, it does give High Evolutionary and those guys the chance to get out of there.
This year we're satellite.
All the existing Phalanx in that area along with Ultron. Now, that's not the last time we're going to see him. Don't worry, Ultron didn't go out with the death of a star. It would be the least interesting ending to Ultron ever, so don't worry, it's not the last time we see him. But what we end up doing here is switching over to
being that your GPT-3 is supposed to have that figured out, right, Vicky? You're gonna go ahead and have an early position, lattice it in there with your algorithm, how AU 2AX turns into some form of movie put into the scale today. Yeah, I've been running Warren Buffett with all the Apple worker elves on his knee about going through the case of Dante's parody here of the 72 demon effect.
The nature of the Annihilation Wave was not just a giant army of thugs. I mean, it was to a degree.
Wow.
They basically had generals, right? Those individuals.
That's the problem with that algorithm. It might tell you to tungsten rod everybody from Mars and the moon base and maybe a satellite city. I'm not exactly sure on which way that goes, but there's other models to it. I would suggest first, I mean, there's some things in the social number there that if you programmed it into how administrative protocol went to the Justice League over here before Wolverine opens a can of whoop ass.
That Ron and the Accuser showing up here is done for a very particular reason, because when he arrives,
it's one of them stories, Batman. You're gonna wind up live long enough to see yourself become the villain or die trying, right? I mean, kind of to a certain degree. If you can't thin out Beijing and you decided the geometry on a thing had to go this way, and you're arguing with GPT-3's limit on whether that's under sea level or not, water treatment plant.
You have basically the entire Kree race, led by the Supreme Intelligence, which are ridiculously powerful, standing against Ravenous and what's
the thing you said we don't need it. All right, well, we'll get rid of it for now. We'll come up later, I guess. You'll be back
both races, right? Vice versa. If the Kree decided to attack the Annihilation Wave, they would basically end up getting annihilated, right? It would destroy all of their forces. And so where you initially have Ravenous, who's like, there will be no truce, and initially goes against and tries to find a way to destroy Ron and the Accuser, you basically end up having Wraith that makes his move. Now, Wraith
water involved, everybody watching. Maybe we had a deal and you got the elephants mad enough to stomp him out if he got a hold of Gazelle that you don't care about anymore. And yeah, well, that's what you get for being a stupid sheer guy. But otherwise, not much you can do about it out there in the bush.
He's not that important to the overall Marvel landscape, and he's really not even important to Annihilation Conquest. He's only really important in this moment, but he is immensely
we can't beat the crap out of each other at these Mason assemblies here, but we always got the parking lot.
Or at least was a Kree who, as a child, was sucked into a kind of wormhole after his family was slaughtered.
Which is kind of the point. It's like, it has to go there. Why? Why is that the argument on why they'll kick and move and do things where you couldn't rationalize the science behind it, or program in something that really did this here? If you had to upgrade this thing on your A100 computer chip, try to teach it the NP problem, how to design an electrical engineer and the proper, where do you start quantum mechanics of the storyboard here? Is it a 650 behind me right now, right?
Virtually anything instantaneously, as long as a being is not of sufficient power to eradicate him on the spot, he can survive from virtually any sort of damage. But the Exelon themselves, these parasites, also provide kind of
well, these kind of things are pocket universes for something like the Old Man step in there. If GPT-3 was deepfaking him, and you could say, look, whether they're here or not at the Minecraft table, I forget which number it is, that's what you're going to be programming this Roman 7 days build to be in a straight line of how the story is told. And so in that way you'll get this Maxwellism of points and stories or different lists. Who was first? Cap, Tony Stark. Well, what if they had things, and in that way it's still one by virtue of if they had to do the operation. Well, they're on a line. If you could factor that kind of system up into the right to say successor by Pensro units, not necessarily units that are...
Did you know Google makes a phone? Sure, it's beautiful, but it does things other phones can't do, which is how it helps take...
End up doing here is
you gotta operate, right? Well, that's not objective true, because we had, you have to double operate to make sure that the goals by those timelines are the result that does. Now, what did to the moment that determines the photons gluons, or the gluons photons, in terms of the 104 photon to 106 how with a muon sitting in the middle, because I actually need that energy level to uniform the temperature before I add another unit to it that changes that temperature in some way.
Guardians of the Galaxy. And Peter Quill is ultimately subdued and met by the arrival of Ultron. So of course, where the rest of the members are able to make their escape,
I'm not sticking my head in a Hydra glider. I'm specifically standing in the reactor and shutting the door and letting them come at me.
Making up for the fact that I left you guys on a massive cliffhanger in the last video. what we end up doing here is picking up with Ultron as really you kind of have the torturing process going on with Peter Quill. Now, Ultron's initial response here to these guys, right, to the Phalanx who are taking it to Peter is, why are you physically torturing him? We need what's in his head. We don't need what's in his body, right? We don't need that to happen. And so the result of this is Ultron tries to use the power of the Phalanx, basically technological
it's like,
telepathy,
wow, you have the information, it's so deep and compelled inside of there. I mean, Ultron's in a form where you're actually competing against human nature, which is why, to a certain degree, I haven't just destroyed your whole server tower or everything else that comes with that, because people played that since, well, you had computers, you didn't have computers, and then you had computers again.
Comes to this realization that because of the fact that he can't read the mind of Peter Quill, that instead he is going to have to physically break him. He's going to have to just inflict such horrors on him that Peter Quill is going to really have no choice but to relent, if for no other
so
reason
perception can change routes. They can act like neutrinos. And again, if this changes your AI, like, you know, how you would understand, I can't torture him to get the information, I have to work some semi-imperial here, yeah, Darkseid, trying to figure it out with Superman and how it'll actually go down, given Marvel's Avengers, right, or
the reality here is that Adam Warlock's powers are constantly in a state of flux, and so what this means is that as they approach the planet Hala, that ultimately his powers flake out, and when that happens, they're just barely able to make it to Hala itself.
The kind of 42-ness stuff that comes in from, okay, General, I know you just told me things, and I'm trying to pass down the fact that you're in your shot.
Now, this is kind of a crazy thing, and initially it seems kind of dumb, and Ravenous even calls it right off the bat, because if you guys remember, at the beginning of Annihilation Conquest, the first thing to be taken over by the Phalanx were the sentries of the Kree. Now, for those of you guys who are familiar with this,
I'll let them do it. You just run around like them, like you're supposed to put the thing in the box, and you screw it up, Grandmaster, you eat all that metal.
It's one of the reasons why the Kree have been such a formidable force throughout the entirety of the universe, because over the years, and when I say years, I mean like the millions of years that their race has been around, if not potentially billions, that what you have were them developing sentries, which were these supremely powerful robots that would normally go in and either accompany Kree soldiers or just fight the battle in Kree soldiers' stead, right? So that you don't have to worry about losing their own. But the sentries were immensely powerful. In Marvel Comics, when the sentries first popped up, they were overpowering superheroes. So that's kind of how these things exist. They're exceedingly capable. But Ravenous calls it right off the bat, and it's like, this is your grand plan, right? Like, literally, the sentries were the first thing
and when I hit a 540, I'm going to send them to you. For some reason, yours falls out of the rank, and you don't want to just destroy their sorry marshmallow for not holding a 540 anymore. Tell them to hit the bell and keep a 550, and they can come in my rank with no problem. I'll keep them away from, I'll eat them for coming at my gear bunnies like that.
Kree sentries, sure, and they are robots. The difference here is that I brought a woman with me, Faxagora, right? This girl can shield these robots from the influence of the Phalanx. We can literally send these immensely powerful robots in, and the Phalanx will never be able to take them over. The Phalanx will never be able to conquer them, so long as we maintain that control. We now have an expansion to our army. Now, one thing I want to make you guys aware of, any one of these sentries is more than enough for the forces of Ravenous and his Annihilation Wave. And so at this point, we jump back to Adam Warlock, and we jump back to Phyla-Vell. Now again, one of the things that had happened here is the High Evolutionary had basically stated that at the request of the Supreme Intelligence, he had devised a way to create perfect Kree, right? And to essentially take these new Kree, essentially turn them into kind of empty vessels, if you want to call them that.
That's 3930. That's that. It's kind of 000 what actually that one is. It's the voice behind you, but 3930 is this SCP that doesn't exist, and if you think it does because you walked in my office, and you'll wind up taking a pill, boy.
And then I could take your brain and put it in the body of that version of yourself that can now bench press.
Not because I want to change you, hypnotize you, make it cluck like a chicken. I'm just going to use words. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to use words.
And to move on.
GPT-30, you make me a masterpiece.
Here to Adam Warlock and to Phyla-Vell is it did exactly that. The Supreme Intelligence followed the instructions of the
message on my thing. Facebook pops up. It says contact Elon. Hit him at Elon Musk on Twitter, and he's expecting expecting
here in
a
this
phone
giant
call or a
hallway full
message
of all
from
these
you.
vessels
Can get
are
right
these
back
new
to you.
free bodies that are just waiting to be
We'll
inhabited.
negotiate
But
the
ultimately, in the
DCG
midst
over
of this
there in frame
conversation,
rate.
the phalanx emerge. But when Adam Warlock asked the question, High Evolutionary, why are those guys here? The response of the High Evolutionary is,
So,
yeah,
1
about
billion
them, they
in
got here first, and they
GP3, you
made
thought
me
a
an
billion
offer. I'm
just in the
sorry,
crypto
Adam
space
Warlock. And the
instead of
High
just putting it
Evolutionary
on
turns against Adam
Binance
Warlock
in itself
and
over
sides with
12,
Ultron
24
and the
months
Phalanx.
at
With that being
$46
said,
million
guys, we're gonna
to
bring
make
this video
sure
to
that
an
you
end.
generated some faith inside a
Another
little bit of vision.
cliffhanger, right? Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later.
Yeah.
Peace.